Tonight, Carney's lead, the Liberal leadership fallout, Trump's trade war about to erupt, plus the focus on rich minerals, and the far-right sees gains in the German election. From Montreal, this is episode 22 of Night Talk. I'm Gary MacDonald.
And once again, it's Eddie Takalik, live from Playa del Carmen, and happy as a pig in poop. Canada beat the United States in hockey as predicted. Woo!
And you had the score right too, didn't you? Was
yes,
it? No.
You
did.
Said overtime 3-2. Yes, I did.
Yeah. So there you go. Were you a betting man on that game?
No, not at all. But I'll tell you what, though. We were actually watching a game with newfound friends just upstairs in our complex here. And when they scored, you can literally hear the entire complex start cheering. There's just so many Canadians here, so it was really wonderful, really wonderful to hear. And you know what? No matter which way the game went, it was a fantastic display of ice hockey, and the sportsmanship after was just great between two friendly countries, which is the way it's supposed to be. So it was a great exposition, really, really nice.
All right, so we're caught up on that aspect of it. Let's look at debate fallout. Has the race shifted after the debates? Voting for the next leader of the federal Liberal Party is now underway, with the winner to be announced March 9th. 4 hopefuls are vying for the job, which will see the winner also become Prime Minister. Now, late last Friday, former MP Ruby Dalla was disqualified by the party over questions about some of her donations. That left former Bank of Canada and Bank of England Governor Mark Carney, former Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, former Government House Leader Karina Gould, and Montreal businessman and former MP Frank Baylis, all vying for the title. All 4 took part in a French debate on Monday and an English debate last night. Now, the debates were low-key in nature, with no hard blows delivered, other than a few direct jabs at Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Dealing with U.S. President Trump and his threatened trade tariffs was a focus in both debates. Frank Baylis says he will call Trump's.
So, first of all, I don't take him at his word. He said March 4th, but I would expect him to hit us beforehand, and I expect him to hit us again. What he's going to do is look at industries where he has overcapacity in the United States, because he'll be thinking that's going to hurt the American economy the least, I should say. So where I'm going to be looking at softwood lumber, and I'm going to be looking at dairy as the next 2 industries he's going to attack. And what we're going to be doing is supporting those industries completely. We're not going to let him take our jobs away, and we're going to be putting into place very intelligent counter tariffs. And then we're going to be waiting. And we're going to be waiting. Because he's not going to stop until he gets the lesson that he can't get away with this. Then what I am going to do is, as I said, I will go down and meet with President Sheinbaum of Mexico, come together with her and say, listen, let's hold the fort together. Let's call him on his 25% tariff bluff. Let's just call it. Tell him, do it. And let's take everything that he already took from us off the table.
And Chrystia Freeland negotiated a new trade agreement with the U.S. and Mexico during Trump's first term in office, and she is talking tough.
My first move is dollar for dollar retaliation, and let me be very clear with President Trump. If I am Prime Minister, I will not flinch. We will retaliate. If you hit us, we will hit back. We are going to have a targeted retaliation that exerts maximum pain in the U.S. and does minimum harm to us. We're going to hit Trump's best friends. I will impose a 100% tariff on Teslas. I'm going to hit Wisconsin dairy. I'm going to hit Florida orange juice. And you are going to see a stock market reaction. You're going to see people like the American Farm Bureau complaining about the Canadian potash they need that costs more. And that reaction, that pain, will cause Trump ultimately to back down, just like he did last time.
Now, Mark Carney, the perceived front-runner, used the opportunity to take a shot at Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre.
We will never, ever be part of the United States in any way, shape, or form. We have to recognize that the Donald Trump of today is different than the Donald Trump of several years ago. Then his objective was to take more of our market. Now he wants to take our country. Let me finish by pointing out one other thing. Who's the worst person to stand up to Donald Trump? It's Pierre Poilievre. He worships the man. He uses his language. He's not the right person for our country at this crucial time.
And Karina Gould says she will spare nothing to protect Canadian jobs and sovereignty.
We have things the U.S. wants, and we're not afraid to use them. And if that means that Americans are going to see increased prices or American industries are going to suffer, we will make sure that we put everything on the table as Canada, because our sovereignty, our economy, our jobs are non-negotiable.
Now, there was one point where it almost appeared to be a debate, and that was between Gould and Carney. She questioned Carney on what he would protect in any negotiations.
One thing that I would like to ask Mr. Carney, because yesterday he made some mentions of sectors that he would protect over others. And I think what is really important is to understand which sectors you're willing to protect, but which sectors you would negotiate away. And that is something that I think as Canadians, we need to understand, because as Prime Minister, I'm not going to negotiate any of those sectors away. I'm going to stand up for people in every single province and territory, every single sector, to make sure that we protect Canadian jobs and protect our industries.
In a negotiation, if there are things that should never enter into the negotiation, language, culture, our water, you make clear at the start of the negotiation that they are off the table. Second thing is that the other aspects, for example, our auto sector, I'll give an example, which is intimately and interconnected with the United States. We're going to negotiate around maintaining a good deal for our auto sector. But that is not the same as accepting a bad deal, Karina.
And Eddie, it was very, very low key, very polite. I was watching Hannah Thibault tonight on Power Play, and she moderated last night's debate. And she was saying that they were so polite. It was such a polite scene. People even raised their hands to be acknowledged instead of just sort of jumping in.
Yeah.
The great Canadian way, how much more milk and toast can you have?
Yeah, you know what? Both you and I have been exposed to the last few American debates, and we're looking at the Canadian, a Liberal Party debate right now, okay? It's probably going to get a little more heated when they actually have the debate for the federal election, but I still would not expect it to come anywhere close to the entertainment quality and the name calling and the people bashing display that we have in American debates. So you know what? I think that's a great point for us as Canadians to bear witness to what the Liberal Party is trying to do. And you know what? With all the theatrics that go along with the U.S. debates, I caught glimpses of the French debate. I watched the English debate in its entirety, the recorded English debate. And you know what? Extremely informative. Myself as a Canadian, I think the people as well would be hard pressed to disagree that they didn't get some level of information that they were able to compare one candidate against the other without name calling and the embellishment and the theatrics. Very civil, very Canadian, good on them. They answered with respect. They answered with information and backing of information. And when asked a question on what they would do or how they would do it, they didn't just resort to name calling or what the predecessor did or did not do. They tried to lay their platform down. And, at the end of the day, you and I talked about this last week, Gary. Everybody's in election. Everybody's in campaign mode, regardless if we're looking at a convention to elect a new Liberal leader and interim prime minister until the next election gets called. They are in campaign mode, and I think the way they presented themselves, every one of them presented themselves as how do you put it, prime ministerial, and I thought they did a pretty good job with that. I don't think there was one clear winner to the next. They talked to 6 or 7 different areas, which we'll go into. Climate and energy, Trump tariffs and whatnot. They all seem to have an opinion and a position to answer the question as directly and best as best they can. So I was pretty pleased with the outcome at the end of the day.
Do you think there was any clear winner in these two debates?
You know, it's hard to tell, depending on where you were looking at, where they were speaking to. I mean, obviously there was a lot of focus, especially in the first show, the French one, about what they're going to do about handling Mr. Trump. They spoke climate and energy, they spoke cost of living, they spoke housing. I mean, all of these things are extremely, extremely important to us. And the nice thing about it is they all had either a common agreement right across the board, complemented with maybe taking a different position and a different avenue to achieve that particular goal in terms of resolving some of the housing crisis we're having in Canada. So I think there might have been a winner in each of the categories per se, but I don't think there was a clear-cut overall winner that can claim victory. And I was hard pressed to actually find something on the Canadian media where any candidate said that they were a clear-cut winner, right? I think they were being very cordial in terms of the respect of their colleagues, and they just basically solidified what they spoke about the night before and how passionate they are about becoming the leader of the Liberal Party and the next Prime Minister of Canada. If I was to give a lean in terms of who captured me, I thought that Carney captured my attention, and also to a large degree Frank Baylis. It's almost like he was a tactician, listening to what everybody else had to say and then planning his response accordingly, and good answers and good responses, especially when it came to his position on improving the cost of living. I thought he won that one quite handily, which to my surprise, I would have figured Chrystia Freeland would have been the winner on that. You look at how they were going to deal with Mr. Trump and his cohorts. Chrystia Freeland was very, very firm and presented a very, very heavy-handed approach, take no prisoners discussions with Trump. And you know what? Rightly so. She was the godmother of the Kuzma Pact that we have in place today, that the United States essentially threw in the garbage, and something that Mr. Trump said towards the end of his term, what kind of a fantastic deal this was, which unfortunately is no longer a fantastic deal for him. And I think also Carney's position on dealing with Trump. So it all depends on what the subject was, but I think Mr. Carney and Frank Baylis kind of were up there in my list. But you know what? Krista and Karina did a remarkable job in keeping pace with the discussions. And I think at the end of the day, it's gonna get closer than we expect. I think that Chrystia gained some points based on what I saw today in some of the polls. So it'll be a very interesting race. And you know what? At the end of the day, doesn't matter which one ends up winning. I think we have good, solid candidates for the Liberal leadership right across the board. And I think it's going to come down to the Liberal membership to decide, who's going to lead them into the next election, and hopefully be able to select a leader that's going to take them to a federal election win, which is starting to look closer and closer as a tight race as we approach March and as we approach an election call. Of course, Mark Carney's got the lead, and Chrystia Freeland from yesterday's debate gained some brownie points amongst liberal members. So yeah, it's really exciting, actually, to tell you the truth.
Well, first of all, we just a reminder, folks, that if you have any thoughts as to who won, who may have lost some ground in the two debates, by all means, let us know. Post a comment. We want to bring you in on this conversation as well. I watched the French debate and then last night's debate, and again, as I say, they were pretty calm. And the other side of it is you have two who are sitting MPs, and then two others on the outside wanting to come in, and it's all like an all in the family debate. So nobody really wants to beat up on the other and get that kind of negative publicity going on the outside. So yeah, it is kind of a delicate situation, I guess, when you're in those kinds of debates and in the situation that the Liberal Party is in at the moment. I was frankly somewhat disappointed with Mark Carney's performance. Certainly, he's not, this is his first venture into politics, but also this is the same man who has given all kinds of speeches all over the world on monetary issues. He didn't look really comfortable. He looked to be a bit out of his element. On Monday night, of course, French not being his native tongue, and he, did struggle a bit with it, but he, pushed on through. He had one little faux pas over mixing up a word where it came out that it sounded like we were all in support of Hamas, and that's not what he was saying. And even somebody made note of the fact, and I didn't catch it, but somebody made note of the fact that the person doing the translation picked up on that, knew what he meant, and but there, it really didn't gain any traction. The Conservatives tried to make something out of it, but they fell flat in their face, and rightly so. I mean, it was an honest mistake.
And what's interesting too, Gary, if I might interrupt. If I'm not mistaken, I mean, how Canadian is this? Here is his opposition in Chrysler Freeland. She actually caught it with the moderator and allowed him to correct himself. Yep. Who does that but a Canadian? Like, wow, that was absolutely amazing. That just convinces me that all four of them have the best interest of the country in mind and running for the Liberal leadership. As opposed to just running in it for themselves, as we've become used to for the last 12 years. It was absolutely remarkable that his opponent helped him identify the mistake and allowed him to correct without attacking him. And of course, like you mentioned in today's newspapers, I mean, of course, the PC attacked him directly right off the bat. Good God, man, you're right, Gary. That guy made an honest mistake, and he was speaking French, right?
Yeah, and not the native tongue of the people on the stage, and they all made a good effort. As a matter of fact, Karina Gould, when they came out to speak to reporters in the spin room following the debate,
right,
one of the reporters asked her about her French, and she just came back and said, "Look, I know it's not perfect, but I'm, using it every day." And she just looked and she said, "And I'm comfortable with it at the moment, but I am going to get better." So, and then she moved on. So I liked the spunk that she showed in that kind of a response. The other side of it is she very gently, it was really gentle when you look at debates we've watched from the U.S. Poked a couple of, as she says, her colleagues in both debates on their positions and trying to draw them out a bit more as to what it was they were saying. She really seemed to have a level of confidence and again that communication skill that she has when she looks into the camera.
At the camera,
yeah. She really looks natural. And as I've said before, like she is actually, you feel like she's talking to you. Mm-hmm. And no one else but you. So, she came through that way. Frank Baylis, from the first time I saw Frank Baylis, and I wasn't really familiar with him at all until he popped up one day on one of the supper time news shows and said, "Yeah, I'm probably going to take a run at the leadership." And the way he handled himself in that particular interview, and then everything else I've watched where he's been involved, I am really, the more I see him, the more I am impressed with him. And it's too bad that he's being referred to as, the fourth person in.
Yeah.
Because even some of the people who have said that, really, they don't think he has that much of a chance, are still saying that he is handling himself well, he's articulate, he has some really good ideas, and he's a no-nonsense kind of individual. And the more I saw of him, especially in last night's conversation, the more impressed I was with this guy. And I'm thinking that if he is not successful, hopefully he will offer in the election, and hopefully he will get a cabinet post if successful, because I think that he is, to me anyway, a prime minister or prime ministerial material in waiting.
In waiting, correct.
Yeah.
Well, we said the same thing about Karina Gould as well, didn't we?
Yes, I did. And I think she is too. And I think her time is the next time out, as I've said before. And actually, I felt pretty good about that because I heard at least 2 pundits today say essentially the same thing and how impressed they were with her handling of both debates. Coming out on top. So I to me, Bayliss and Gould had a lot to prove, and I think they came out on top. They were successful in doing that because today, in particular, after the English debate last night, those are the 2 names I'm hearing more of. Right. I felt Freeland was a flat. Like, for me, she was flat. Once or twice there was like a real sort of spurt of energy or enthusiasm. When she starts talking about negotiating with Donald Trump, like you can see it in her eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But and then she
for
kind
the
of
rest,
off.
Yeah, exactly. The rest of the debate, I found it kind of flat. And as I say, Mark Carney surprised me. He looked to me to be out of his element. And
right.
if I'm a voting liberal, and I had, really looked at Carney and thought, this is the guy, I'd be having second thoughts personally about that and where I would be placing my vote. So the voting has started, as I mentioned a bit earlier. It started today, and I heard through some sources today that some liberals who are registered to vote are having problems logging in and getting to the point where they can actually cast their vote. So I don't know what exactly the issue is, but I know that there have been some people have been calling their MPs' offices and that trying to find out what's going on and how they can cast their vote. So please tell me where that the present government is not using an Elon Musk platform, which is creating problems for our liberal members to cast a vote. What do you think? My guess is it's an Amazon platform.
There we go, even worse. But I was just thinking too. We're looking at the 4 candidates. Now, one of them is going to win. 3 of them are going to. I'm not going to say go home. 3 of them are not going to win. Now, just based on what I've seen the last 2 debates and how they handle themselves in day-to-day news affairs, can you imagine one of these individuals being the prime minister and the other 3 being brought on board with significant portfolios to lead this country? I would be extremely pleased with that, because here we have individuals who are all running for leadership of the party and the country against what other political parties present status quo today. And let me tell you, I think that the four of them together as the A team for Canada moving forward, for at least the Liberal Party moving forward, and potentially the A team for Canada, I think they'd be a force to be reckoned with, to tell you the truth.
Well, guess who is on the same page as you?
Gary MacDonald.
Karina Gould.
No kidding.
Late this afternoon, I just happened to glance over at my iPad, and I had CTV News channel on, and there she is holding a scrum outside of it looked like Parliament Hill, anyway, late afternoon, and here she is. She said, looking at my challengers, a very talented team, and I'm here today to invite, and she named the other three, Freeland and Carney and Baylis.
Baylis, yeah.
Yeah, and she said, I want them to be members of my cabinet when I win.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's, first of all, I have to give her full marks. That's a pretty ballsy move. Yeah. Boom, just to go out and say, okay, this is what I'm doing. But she's been out and she's been, little things like that. So anyway,
by the same token, she probably meant, she realizes that there's a possibility she's not going to win, right? Never count her out. She's basically subliminally saying that whoever wins, I want to be part of this. And that's why I think you're absolutely right in saying she is a prime minister in grooming and in waiting. Not right now, but she will be, and just want to be part of Team Canada in what is really a very, very critical 4 years for our country. It's probably going to set the stage for the next 12 to 16 years in terms of what happens over the next 4 years. So, I was really, really pleased to see that you had four very qualified, highly motivated individuals running for the prime minister, running for the Liberal leadership, and then running for the prime minister of Canada. Whoever the individual is going to give Poilievre a solid run for his money, if not actually defeating him and gaining a majority, which is what I've seen in some of the polls. I think there was a CTV Ipsos poll that basically is giving the Liberal government a possible minority government by way of only 3 seats. So, wow. I mean, what a turn of events over the last 4 weeks, Gary. Like, seriously.
Well, Poilievre has to be shaking in his boots, as we said last week. He's starting to pivot. So, sorry, I'm not being ignorant here. I was just looking for something. Because just to follow through on the conversation.
Right.
Where is it? There's one in particular. That's it. Carney's going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
Because last night he said, remember he chaired the board of, what's the name of it? I just had it. Brookfield Asset Management, former vice chair. And he resigned all of his board responsibilities just prior to, I think he said the middle of January, prior to entering the leadership race. Anyway, that company has moved its head office from Toronto to New York. And the fact of the matter is, what's coming up here is, even though Carney said that happened after he had resigned,
right,
the whole thing was put in motion, and the board was unanimous in approving it, and apparently Carney sent a letter out to investors saying that the board had approved it, was unanimous, and that they're recommending the shareholders vote in favor. Anyway, the Conservatives are now starting to jump on that, and that's going to be a story that probably gets some legs very quickly in the next day or two. And it will be interesting to see how Carney handles it. Now, I know on Power Play today, Vashi Kapelas invited or issued an invitation for Carney to come on and explain it. And that was declined. And the campaign issued a statement instead, and again, reiterated the fact that that happened after he left the board, even though she had a copy of the letter, apparently. And that, yes, the office per se is moving, but no employees were transferred from Toronto to New York. All of the Canadian employees are staying here, and they're maintaining their, Canadian presence in that respect, and that all taxes that are due or payable in Canada will be paid. So it's going to be interesting to see how Carney gets out in front of this. And I mean, this is just, one of the things that as a prime minister in particular, the leader of a party, and as a prime minister in particular, you're going to have to be ready to deal with at any time, whether the information on the other side is true, partially true, or false. However, the thing of it is, in politics, it must not only be right, but it must be perceived to be right. And perception is a bigger part of the game most of the time than, the actual situation. In other words, the old saying used to be, never let the facts get in the way of a good story. So it will be interesting to see how that shakes out. But I'm just going to say again that I really feel that, Carney is the perceived front runner, and between Trudeau's resignation and the initial bump around Carney indicating he was going to seek the leadership, and then the other three candidates that we have on stage with Carney, the Liberals have closed the gap. And I think what it is, more than anything, is Canadians, the more they see Poilievre, and they've listened to him long enough with the 2 and 3 word slogans and just hammering it over and over and over again, I think Canadians are looking for something different, and that they feel a little more comfortable with the fact that Trudeau and his take on life is gone, and that's somebody that they can relate to a little better, and with business backgrounds and such, and political experience, then I think, that's where the swing is coming. And, Poilievre, I saw somebody on one of the social media platforms the other day, like Poilievre, like the conservative leader who blew a double-digit lead over the Liberals. And and the Liberal attack ad, they really pulled the gloves off, and it's just, a Trump comment and a Poilievre echo, like common sense.
Right.
And, to me, you would think that the Conservatives and Poilievre would have caught on to this either just when that ad first broke, because it's been out for over a week, I think now, or could sense it building with the patriotism levels building in this country after, Trump started really pushing us around. You would think they would have caught that and pivoted right away, and pivoted away from anything that might even remotely sound, smell, taste like
Trump.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they're very slow out of the gate on that, which then now also, for me as an individual, calls into question, how good of an organization is it?
Yeah. Well, last week Well, last week we had asked ourselves, would the real Pierre Poilievre please stand up?
Yep.
And for him to immediately allow his campaign management to attack a minor error that Mr. Carney made during a liberal debate, I thought was a little underhanded. Is that the way Mr. Poilievre is going to run his campaign? That's point number one. And the other point is, we talked about this a few episodes ago, is, we had the circus that was on the House floor weeks ago, which was spearheaded by Mr. Poilievre, who really came out looking Trump-esque, if you want to put it. And then all of a sudden, he took a different approach where he seemed more prime ministerial. He seemed more decent, and he seemed more polite in terms of his comments and his views on the issues and situations that are really important to the people of Canada, right? And then to draw back and allow his campaign team to start, not even 24 hours after that mistake was made, to go after Mark Carney. And I think they have to, because he is the leader right now in terms of what the polls are saying for the liberal leadership. So I'm still kind of saying to myself, would the real Mr. Pierre Poilievre stand up? And I just have this feeling inside that what's going to happen leading up to the federal election, any campaigns, the real Mr. Poilievre is going to come out, and I don't think it's going to be the statesman that we've seen the last 3 or 4 weeks. I think the real Pierre Poilievre is going to come out, which is the same one we saw on the Commons floor, and with the circus that he tried to conduct as the ringmaster those many months ago. So, yeah, I don't know. You're right. I mean, he dropped from a double-digit lead to, I think, what he's down to 9 or 10 now, or something like that. What a gain by the liberal party in terms of where he places right now. And I think there was a CTV Ipsos, and I'm looking at it right now, with Mark Carney taking the Liberal Party into the next election. Conservatives 40 points, Liberals 37.9 points, 38 points. Holy smokes, what a jump. Like, seriously speaking. So you said,
and when you
actually said 2 months ago, you said 2 months ago, this one is Pierre Poilievre's to lose. And the numbers are starting to show that he's starting to lose it a little bit in terms of the people of Canada and what they're looking for in terms of change.
And what I was going to say was, I don't have the poll in front of me, but the margin of error, probably with that factored in, puts the cons and the libs pretty much in a dead heat.
Neck and neck, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, in summary, I think that, I don't think, for me anyway, Carney didn't gain any ground. I think he may have lost maybe a bit, but certainly he came out of the debates, at least, especially if he can control this little episode regarding the move of his company, or the company that he was with at the time. And Chrystia Freeland was, I don't think she really got a whole lot of traction coming out of these two debates. I think that Frank Baylis really opened some eyes, and people, are sitting up and taking notice. And I think that Karina Gould has caught a lot of attention, especially within liberal ranks as well. So, I think probably, I would say Baylis and Gould would come out, I wouldn't say winners, but I think that they emerged from both debates in a slightly better position than what they were going in. I think Freeland, didn't make any gains, but I don't think she lost anything. I think Carney took maybe a bit of a hit
Right.
Based on his performance. But, we'll see, because, again, he's the perceived front runner and seems to be the favorite of some of the party stalwarts. And everybody has been saying more than anything that initially they thought that this was going to be just a straightforward coronation of Carney.
Right.
Well, you've got a couple of candidates who stepped up, and it may still be a coronation, but he's going to have to work a little harder for the crown than perhaps what was first thought. Your thoughts on that, Eddie?
Well, you know what? My thoughts. I mean, I think I can ask a question too. I mean, Gary, do you think that this particular party leadership, in my recollection, it's been a long time since I've actually read in the paper the genuine interest in all the candidates that are vying for the leadership of a political party in Canada. There is a tremendous amount of interest. I just don't seem to recall any previous leadership races drawing this much attention. What do you think that is?
I think it has something to do at this particular point in time with what we're facing from south of the border, and the sudden surge in the our level of patriotism and pride with in the country. I think that has a lot to do with it. All of a sudden, wow, who's going to be, because whoever wins this liberal leadership will be prime minister at least for a day, for sure. Mm-hmm. So right. This is our next leader of our government. So I think more people are starting to jump on board from that perspective as well. And it really, in some respects, as annoying and as frightening for a lot of people as it has been and will be, maybe Trump is doing this country a favor in waking us up to be much more patriotic, and that new sense of unity right across the country. Although Alberta now is kind of there's a movement in Alberta that kind of puts a bit of a dent in it, but overall, the level of unity and patriotism in this country probably has shot up 150%.
Yeah.
From the first of the year, or back in November when Trump first started making noises about tariffs and then Canada becoming a 51st state. So right. I think that's where a lot of that interest is coming from. And you know what? So be it. Whatever it takes, great. And now it's there. Let's keep it going.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. So with that, and again, if anyone watching has any thoughts on the leadership race and or who they think the winner is going to be, or your thoughts if you watched any of the one of the two debates or both debates this week, by all means weigh in on the conversation. I'm really interested in Eddie's question. Why all of a sudden do we seem to have a great interest in politics, and especially this particular leadership race? Let us know, and we'll share your comments with everyone as well. Yeah. So with that, let's move along. Coming up on the brink of a trade war. But first, a reminder, if you enjoy our live stream and would like to buy us a coffee, simply scan the QR code that's on the screen at the beginning of the show, and a link in the description below. Eddie and I appreciate your kindness. So, Trump's trade war about to erupt. Well, President Donald Trump says he is pushing forward with 25% tariffs on Canadian goods sold to the U.S., the first round set to take effect next week after a 30-day pause. The other tariffs, including steel and aluminum, are set to take effect on April 2nd. And just before I go any farther on that one, I was watching Trump today, And originally it was supposed to take effect on April 1st. And he said, I think we'll push it back to April 2nd. He said, I'm kind of superstitious. Superstitious. I mean, guess what April 1st is?
Yeah. That's true. Huh?
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, during his first cabinet meeting today, Trump again pushed his idea of Canada becoming the 51st state.
We support Canada $200 billion a year in subsidies one way or the other. We let them make millions of cars. We let them send us lumber. We don't need their lumber. We're going to free up our lumber. Lee's going to do the head of environmental. We're going to free up our lumber. We have the best lumber there is. We don't need their lumber. What do we need their lumber for? When you look at we subsidize them $200 billion a year. Without us, Canada can't make it. You know, Canada relies on us 95%. We rely on them 4%. Big difference. And I say Canada should be our 51st state. There's no tariffs, no nothing. And I say that we give them military protection. They have a very small military. They spend very little money on military. On NATO, they're just about last in terms of payment because they say, why should we spend on military? That's a tremendous cost. Most nations can't afford to even think about it. Why should we spend on military? The United States protects us. And I would say that's largely true. We protect Canada, but it's not fair. It's not fair that they're not paying their way. And if they had to pay their way, they couldn't exist. When I spoke to, let's call it the prime minister rather than the governor, but when I spoke to him, I said, why are we giving you $200 billion a year? He was unable to answer the question. I said, why are we letting you make millions of cars and send them in? He was unable to answer the question. Justin Trudeau, a nice guy. I think he's a very good guy. I call him Governor Trudeau. He should be governor because the fact is that if we don't give them cars, we don't have to give them cars. The tariffs will make it impossible for them to sell cars into the United States. The tariffs will make it impossible for them to sell lumber or anything else into the United States. And all I'm asking to do is break even or lose a little bit, but not lose $200 billion. And we love Canada. I love Canada. I love the people of Canada. And but honestly, it's not fair for us to be supporting Canada. And if we don't support them, they don't subsist as a nation.
And just before we get into that particular conversation, Eddie, I just want to come back around to a comment. We just had a comment come in. So Deborah says, Carney is clearly the Liberal Party's golden boy. However, I just can't shake my distrust of bankers.
Good point.
Okay, well, and if anyone else has any opinions along those lines, by all means, join in on the chat. We'd love to hear from you. And let's go back now to our little discussion.
Yeah.
Donald Trump, and that was during, before the cabinet meeting actually got started today, I think. It was one giant news conference, it seemed to be, really. But he's not giving up. I found it interesting how he said, well, you know, Governor Trudeau, I could call him, but I'm going to call him Prime Minister. It was almost like,
right.
Yeah, it's almost like, did he actually gain a respect for the office? Mm-hmm. I don't know. But Buddy's sitting next to him, his defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, he was the one, he chuckled again when Trump mentioned Governor Trudeau. That's the guy, he had to be in the room for that other clip. Yeah. And I just...
Gary, you know what? I listened to what he was saying and trying to keep a very straight face and be as objective as possible, as both you and I usually are. And the thing that came to mind when he started spewing out these numbers in terms of, you know, where we're subsidizing. We went through the definition of subsidy last time. We're subsidizing. The first thing that came to my mind was, where is he getting his information from? He's obviously getting it from Fox News, because all of their information is absolutely bang on. And they have 50% of the viewership in the United States, so that means they must be right. I don't know where Donald is getting his numbers from. I mean, if a person with the common and basic knowledge of mathematics just took the time to research on the internet or use ChatGPT and get lazy about it, it will tell you that we're not even close to that kind of a deficit figure in terms of what he's claiming he's subsidizing. And I ran some quick numbers. In terms of Canadian imports, goods, like hard goods being brought into Canada, we bring in $277 billion a year, right? The United States buys $421 billion from Canada. So yeah, they're buying a lot more than we're buying from them. But as you so eloquently put it, we're a population of 39 million people. They're a population of 350 million people or so. So if you're looking at the dollars and cents per capita, right, in terms of us buying goods from the United States, it's $6,925 per person in Canada in terms of purchasing product from the United States. You flip the coin the other way around, in terms of per capita by an American importing goods from Canada, it's only $1,200 per person. So we're talking about 3 or 4-fold difference. So, it's just so unfortunate that numbers like this don't make it out to the general public in the United States. And then you have, then you have Donald Trump with his cohorts beside him, laughing and giggling at these stupid comments that Donald Trump is making, disrespectful comments about our prime minister again, and his views that Canadians want to become part of the 51st state of the United States. It just completely irks me that people just eat this up and they believe it. And the funny thing is he believes that Canadians are going to believe what he's saying as well. He's got his cohort down there to believe everything he says. To think that a regular person in Canada, the people of Canada, are going to eat this up and say, yeah, Donald was right. He's our man. We should become the 51st state. I mean, I have no idea what the motivation for him to say that on a consistent basis, besides pacifying his ego. We're never going to become the 51st state of the United States willfully. Let's put it that way. So it's just frustrating to watch that, and his Heskett fellow there, the Xbox anchor, giggling again. And I'm sure it was the same guy that giggled like the last time I agree with you.
Yeah, it sounded like it.
Just irks me,
Yeah. And Deborah's right. On both sides, Trump and Putin, there are people who are chuckling in the background as the two of them go along their merry way. Thanks for that, Deborah.
I think this Deborah's starting to get pissed off too.
Well, of course, she doesn't trust bankers either. Remember that.
So what did you think about that entire charade besides the laughing?
It's more the same. He just keeps chipping away, and it's almost now, in some respects, becoming funny, because either he chooses to ignore, or he totally is so out of touch, so out of it, that he doesn't realize what he has done for Canada with this kind of talk. And we go back to what we were talking about in the last segment about how much our pride, our patriotism, our unity has shot up. Yeah, really. So you don't know. I watched Newfoundland and Labrador Premier Andrew Furey the other day when he announced suddenly that he was stepping down.
Right.
And, in the scrum following his formal announcement, they asked him about Trump. And he just kind of went out and he said, he's a moron. And then he said, well, I guess I can say that now because I'm done.
Yeah,
He's a moron, and you like there's no getting a read on him at all. It depends on how he gets up in the morning and who says what to him, and because he tells you one thing 1 minute, and 5 minutes later it's changed just
something
like
else.
that.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah. So really, when you get down to how do you deal with something like that, and here we go too. I noticed that we still have some delegations, and some of the provinces are sending delegations to Washington still.
Mm-hmm.
Stop wasting your time. There's no return on investment there right now. Not until we get the counter tariffs on and we start choking them off.
Yeah,
And get out and jump the jets over to Europe and over to Southeast Asia, and let's get those trade lines opened up and solidified ASAP, because Trump today announced 25% tariffs on the European Union. So, and they were expecting it. So they're very open to talking to us and strengthening our relationship both on a trade level, and I would think on a military level, on a security level as well. So, and then the other day you had that report. Was it the Wall Street Journal? I think it was Wall Street Journal, with a source saying that they were looking at cutting Canada out of the Five Eyes organization, and one of Trump's security people came out and said, no, there's nothing to that. And I don't know where their source is or what they were thinking of, but there's been no discussion of that. Although I wouldn't be surprised. It would not surprise me if behind the scenes he was doing that. And of course, the Five Eyes is a security, intelligence, and sharing small group comprised of the United States, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the UK. So, yes, and we're probably one of the small players as far as the Five Eyes, given the size of our military, and if you look at it on a per capita basis, I don't know what Australia has, and nor do I, know what New Zealand has. Maybe on a per capita basis, their military is bigger than ours, but I don't know. Anyway, they're small players, and we're a small player in that group as well. But again, I have to start asking myself, even if we're still cooperating with them on intelligence sharing, how much of what we're getting is legit?
Oh, that's true too. You mean getting from the Americans?
Yeah.
Yeah. True.
Because look at the people that he's putting in place to head up these various agencies, and then think about Trump himself. I don't think there's a word of truth that has crossed his lip in years.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's the organization that we're dealing with. So, can you really trust it? Because Trump doesn't trust them himself. He doesn't trust the FBI. He doesn't trust the CIA. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's a toxic environment. And how solid is the intel that they may be sharing with us? I'm beginning to question that aspect of it as well. So, I don't want to get any conspiracies going or anything like that, but it's just a natural thing for me to say, okay, given what I've witnessed.
Well, you know what though? So you have 5 countries that are part of this this group, right? I was just thinking about what you were saying. I would not, if the Canadian, look, CSIS is a very, very smart an organization. They've been around for a long time. Okay. What's to say that CSIS in Canada, along with the Australian, New Zealand, and British intelligence agencies, are not already having these conversations and saying, can we trust the Americans? I would venture a bet that that's probably happening as you and I speak. I would not be surprised. I mean, if Canada is suspicious or potentially suspicious of the quality of the information that's coming from the United States, if it's truthful or misleading for a hidden agenda, I would bet you a nickel that the other countries involved with this organization are equally questioning the integrity of what the United States is giving them information-wise. That's what just crossed my mind. So,
well, look at it from this. Yeah, look at it from this perspective, Eddie. You know, look at what Trump has done to Ukraine and Zelensky. Like, just a complete reversal and setting them up. Like,
yeah, Zelensky the dictator, no less.
Yeah, he turned on them.
Yeah, true.
You know, and saying, you know, that they started the war.
Yeah. Well, just like Tucker Carlson agreed with Comrade Putin that Poland started Second World War. Same type of deal. Like, come on, man. What the hell? Yep. Oh, it's that was a scary statement, a scary state of affairs with the Ukraine recently. I just couldn't believe it. A lot of the folks here as well that are with us on holiday just could not believe what came out of Trump's mouth or Vance's mouth in Germany and out in the Ukraine. It's just so, it's really sad, disheartening and sad to hear that come from the leader of the United States, the supposed leader of the free world, just to, you know, you're on your own, buddy, and then on top of that, to add insult to injury, call him a dictator in public forum, for crying out loud. My goodness.
And, you know, history is repeating itself. And, you know, you go back to the early days before World War II and Hitler, and you know, you can almost check off each box ever since Inauguration Day.
Yeah.
The only difference being is Trump, how can I put this? Trump and some of the people he has surrounded himself with, I would suggest collectively do not have a level of intelligence to that would be comparable to, God forbid, Hitler and his group.
Yeah.
If you know what I'm trying to say here.
I know what you're trying to say, yeah.
Yeah. And that's an extremely frightening situation. And look at last week, he fires the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Yeah, Bob Jones.
Fires him on Truth Social.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's some other things that have been happening there where it just seems that one opinion I read the other day, that the way that was handled, it could be construed as removing the responsibility that the Joint Chiefs have to the Constitution first,
right,
over the president.
Yeah.
So, like, there are just all sorts of things that are happening there right now. It is total chaos, and it's not getting any better. So far, really, it has been, aside from, you know, the USAID cuts that the unelected U.S. President Elon Musk initiated,
right,
cutting off aid to different countries around the world, third world countries. Yeah, most of the damage has been confined to the continental U.S. But as some of these guardrails start to take some dents or start coming down,
Disappearing, yeah.
Yeah, what's next? Where does it go from here?
Yeah.
Anyway, certainly with the deadline for Mexico and Canada to prove to the president, and that's the way his Commerce Secretary referred to it today during the session at the cabinet meeting, he clarified Trump's response to a reporter's question about the 30-day pause, and he said it's up to Canada and Mexico basically to prove to the president that there has been improvement in reducing the number of illegals coming across the borders and the amount of fentanyl coming across the borders. And then from there, he used the term, from there, it'll be open to negotiations, or, we'll start negotiations. So we could get, and it sounds like we might, who knows, but it depends, get maybe another extension on that pause, because the president has found sufficient evidence to negotiate a little more.
I don't know. You know what? He's all about ego and what he perceives as what his credibility is to the rest of the world. You know what? He can't just continue pushing this back off, being President Trump, because he's going to be, the last thing he needs in terms of his ego getting bruised is to seem weak or seem unwilling to take that significant step, which a lot of his base are waiting for him to do. A lot of his base are waiting for him to kick ass, is what they call it, whether it's justified or not. And you know what? He can't lose that base. So I think at this particular point of this particular stage of the game, Gary, he's going to push forward with it at the risk of him getting soft. And he does not like portraying himself as a soft person, right?
So something just crossed the screen here. More than 300,000 have signed a petition to have Elon Musk's Canadian citizenship revoked.
Right?
Yep. Yeah. So that's growing. And of course, the other thing is, there's a G7 meeting in the summer in Alberta, and
correct.
The U.S. president is a convicted felon.
They should not change the law. I tell you, they should let Conair 1 fly over Canadian air, and then ground control basically say, sorry, you can't land here. You got a criminal on board, and send them the hell back.
Well, I did a bit of research, and as a convicted felon, President Donald Trump's entry into Canada for a G7 conference would typically be restricted under Canadian immigration laws, which bar individuals with criminal records from entering the country. However, exceptions can be made, especially for heads of state attending international events. In such cases, Canada may grant, are you ready for this, a temporary resident permit to allow entry despite the conviction. Therefore, while the standard policy would deny entry, it's plausible that President Trump could be permitted to attend the G7 conference in Canada through diplomatic channels and special permissions.
Wow. Well, look, if, for example, whoever the leader of Canada is at that time, takes one of two approaches. No, we're not going to be making a special exception for you. Or if they are going to be making a special exception, because we are speaking about the United States of America with its economic clout, let the world know that Canada is making an exception and accepting a convicted felon and giving him temporary citizenship. What did you call it, Gary? I can't remember. Giving him a temporary residence to be able to attend this conference, and milk that for all it's worth. Don't just give it to him and be quiet about it. Milk it. I would milk it like there's no tomorrow.
Or we could let the CBSA just say at Calgary or Edmonton airports, when he arrives, convicted felon, get on the jet and get out.
Get out of here, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Oh my goodness.
And then whoever is prime minister at the time just say, see, our borders are tightened up. It is working. We're not letting any illegals in.
Good one. There's your proof, Mr. President.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh boy.
Exactly. Okay, so up next, we have an update on the growing interest in rich minerals, and a far-right extremist party makes significant gains in Germany. Now, if you are enjoying or thinking about starting a YouTube channel and wondering about what app to use for live streaming or recording your show, I would recommend Ecamm. That's the app we use for Night Talk. It's essentially a video production facility just a click away in an app. You can get more information by clicking the affiliate link in the description below. Rich minerals and far-right gains. U.S. President Trump is making a lot of noise about rich minerals. Access to Ukraine's supply of the materials has been one of the key factors in Trump's push to end the war with Russia. He has also mentioned them when talking about Canada becoming the 51st state.
Right.
All right, over to Switzerland we go for an update on the whole issue around rich minerals and, of course, the outcome of the German election. Joining us from Switzerland is Night Talk contributor Christian Falk. Christian, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Already there's more changes coming about as far as all of the discussion around rich minerals. First of all, Christian, really what are we talking about when we use the phrase rich minerals?
Well, rich minerals, we're specifically talking about strategic minerals, which are basically having a huge impact on the automotive industry, on the IT, like all daily devices like mobile phones, cars, etc., etc. We talk about rare earth metals, which Trump is partially talking about when we have a look now at the Ukraine, but also like industrial metals like copper, zinc, etc., etc. Those are the minerals we're talking about.
Okay, so we already have word that U.S. President Trump and Ukraine President Zelensky have reached some kind of a deal on Ukraine providing rich minerals to the U.S. What kind of an impact would that have on the market for rich minerals overall?
Well, basically, we know that the Ukraine is the producer of mass alloys, which is more going in the mass production, like steel production. We're talking about, I don't want to go too much into the specifics, but we're talking about silicon, etc., etc. However, big minerals. However, it is known that the Ukraine has a lot of strategic minerals like rare earths, which are very important to the U.S. because the main exporter of those minerals is at the moment our main producer is China. And we know the tensions between China as well as the U.S. China is using the rare earths specifically as a pressure against potential sanctions from the U.S. Yeah. So from that regards, that will be an alternative going into the Ukraine. However, how realistic is it, and what is the time frame on utilizing those minerals? You can do a deal here, but still, as said, commodities, mining, this is a dinosaur business. It takes years in order to establish from an exploitation contract or like a greenfield to a really producing project. So looking into exploiting those minerals could take years, and it's not something which could be utilized tomorrow. Yeah, that would be for something for the next term of the next president. Yeah.
All right. Now we know also that Trump is looking at Canada regarding rich minerals as well. And of course, Africa is a source of supply for rich minerals. And in one area in particular, South Africa, you were there about 2 weeks ago when the South African president all of a sudden said, okay, U.S., you've done us wrong and we're cutting you off. And that all centered around the cuts of aid coming from the USAID. you were there. What was the sense that you were getting as to how effective this whole move by the South African president, how effective would that be?
Well, no one actually expected a strong response like this from South Africa. That was historical. Like, even the impact it could potentially have. We're talking about billions. I think we were talking about the trade deficit of $249 billion of metals, of all kinds of metals from Africa. The thing is that South Africa is the main hub of the export of all minerals. So that includes minerals from the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, from Zambia, around in Rwanda. Most of those, next to Tanzania, are routed via South Africa. And South Africa itself is also very rich in big commodities like iron ore, chromium, which have a huge impact for the US economy. So we're talking about a double, let's put it like double punishment. Not only the US could route material through South Africa, but also like the material which is actually sourced in South Africa would not leave the country to the US. We were quite happy about the response. Let's put it like not happy, but quite surprised. And it was a bold move. However, how does this look in real life? The commodities business is a really invisible, shady business. Let's put it like this. Even US companies all of them have mostly European-based umbrella companies, where it's really hard to track if those sanctions actually could take effect. I talked to 2-3 trading houses down there in South Africa, and they already indicated that there are alternative routes in order to secure those resources. Yeah.
All right, so let's move from rich minerals over to the outcome of the German election over the weekend. Your sense, your view as to what happened in Germany?
Well, actually, what was expected? Everyone expected to have a divided country when it comes to the polls, like the outcome of the election. On the east side, we have the alternative of Germany, like the more far right, and then on the west side, middle side, up and like Germany, like the central Germany, we had like the Christian Democratic Union who took the majority of the votes. It was clearly not the victory for the alternative for Deutschland, Germany, but they doubled their votes within one term from 10% to 22%. And the Christian Democratic Union were at around 29%. So we got congratulations from Mr. Trump and his team. And from our side, like we saying that the USA could be happy with the outcome because Mr. Friedrich Merz, now the leader of this Christian Democratic Union, is considered as the most friendliest opponent, partner when it comes to the US. He comes from the private sector. He worked for big firms like BlackRock, for big banks, as well as consultancy houses in the US, but also in Germany. So he has a little bit of an understanding on how also the US works in that perspective, yeah. So the all over sense of this, like what Friedrich Merz now is saying is Europe needs to become more independent from the US, and that was the first thing he said. He said, we want to get rid of the dependence of the US, especially when it comes to defense. And the way on how Trump is now pushing to find a deal with Russia makes Europe even more worried. That's why now it's happening in this very moment. France, Britain, and Germany are sitting together to see if they could do like a nuclear deal. The three of them. The Britain is already weaponized, and we're seeing on how we could build alliances who could help us to be independent from the US.
Well, along that very line, last night in the Liberal leadership debate, one of the candidates brought that very fact up, that as far as Canada is concerned, we should be turning our attention to Europe, and how can we work with the Europeans as far as defense and security would be concerned. And of course, they pointed out the fact that both France and Britain have nuclear weapons. And so because we're at a point here in Canada, as you know, where we can no longer really depend or trust our closest neighbor and former ally.
Exactly. I mean, we are having the discussions here as well, and we're reaching out with a hand to Canada as well. Of course, there's a lot of dependency between Canada and the USA. You cannot just interrupt all the trade overnight. Especially, there's still the Atlantic Ocean between both of us. However, in terms of logistics, that might be not always suitable, but there's definitely a way to increase the trade volume and the partnership between Canada and the European Union. I think we in any case have a good partnership. I mean, looking between Quebec and Bavaria, we already know that there are special agreements between both in terms of economy and trade. I think we're really would look forward in order to strengthen this relationship.
All right, now I know you have to go here very shortly, but I did want to ask you about the gain that the AFD made, the far right-leaning party, which was endorsed by, of all people, the unelected U.S. President Elon Musk. If I remember correctly, it's the biggest gain that party has made post-war. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And if so, what do you think is driving that kind of attention to this party?
I mean, it was their program, which they're blaming now also the Christian Democratic Union to have copied. Basically, they were really strict on immigration policies. More strict than any other, but it's a dividing party. People are just afraid that they're too on the far right side, and given the history of Germany, we're actually super sensitive when it comes to far right positions, and all the alarm is ringing our bells. However, it was also a vote from frustration from the German people, because the far left and the left, the Green Wing, they didn't do a good job, and a lot of problems arise. So that was also a protest vote in some aspect. Yeah.
All right, Christian, I know you have to run off, so thanks so much for this and giving us the background and your insight as far as rich minerals and the outcome of the German election.
Thanks for having me.
It was interesting, a couple of the things that he brought up. First of all, about the rich minerals and how that whole thing was in South Africa, and the South African president just saying, yeah, you're cut off. You want to cut off the aid from USAID, then we're done with the disrespect. I remember the South African president was quoted and he used the word disrespect. And they were the first, I think they're the first African, he said they were the first African nation to pull something like this and just say, okay, you want to take your balls and bats and go home? That's fine, because you're not getting ours. Anyhow,
well, I think there was actually a lot of comment. I've seen some comment on, I forget where it was exactly, that a lot of African nations actually hailed him for his bravery in coming out and doing that. So, you know what? He might be setting a precedent in terms of African countries, which typically have been the battering ram or battered into the ground by American business interests. Maybe some of these countries are going to follow suit and defend their resources as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, that's pretty much a wrap on episode 22. Unless you have something else, Eddie?
No, that was very informative. That was a lot of fun, and looking forward to the next leader of the Liberal Party to be elected, and I'm looking forward to the hotly contested seat in the House of Parliament, getting a new Prime Minister in Canada in place so we can deal with the Americans. Looking forward to that.
And that's going to be a challenge all the way through.
Yeah.
Okay, so a reminder to you to remember to like and subscribe, and also share any of our episodes. Please do, because it's going to help us grow the channel. And if you're watching later on, leave a comment below with your thoughts on any or all topics covered tonight or on other topics we've touched upon. Night Talk returns in 7 days. From Montreal, I'm Gary MacDonald. Good night, Eddie.
Good night, everybody.